All right, back at this yard here, Pyrenees Yard. This one was in really bad shape last time we were here. I think we had to make 31 splits to rebuild. And the problem here is that this yard is consistently at about a 50% mating rate. So those 31 splits we made, so I expect about half of them to fail, which means we'll need to probably rebuild about 15. All the flag hives there. I know we ran out of lids, so there were still a few dead outs, 6 or 7, something like that. And this is a weird 22 pallet yard, so I did bring a couple more 4-way pallets to extend it to a 24 pallet yard, so that'll expand this yard up to 96 hives. And 24 pallets is just the maximum I can get on the truck, so I just kind of usually prefer to have even numbers. The splits we made pretty darn strong. I remember a lot of these we had supered those dead outs onto the queen colony, so we were able to basically pop off a deep that was usually full of bees and brood, and then even pop off a medium that also had been full of bees and brood. So the splits were like full-blown, near about 20 frame population colonies. Now that's not going to have anything to do with them queening, but we did run through the minis. They're still kicking, a few of them are. So we were able to cage some mated queens, and still have a few cells left. So hopefully that'll get us through. If not, we'll have to make some queenless splits. This yard was really strong. If you remember last time, the grass and crap was so freaking bad here, man. Like, you couldn't see the hives. I was tripping and falling on vines the whole time. It was miserable. So you can see I sprayed. We brought them over too, so we're going to chop all this up at the end. Because the other problem with this yard was they were extremely aggressive. They weren't defensive. They were full-blown aggressive towards us. We had to jump in the truck. We were getting stung very bad. So I'm a little concerned about that. They've also only had 1 bucket. I think, I could be wrong, I believe this is the last yard that's only had 2 gallons. All the other yards have now had 4 to 6 gallons. But they were extremely honey bound. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. I kind of doubt, I don't think they drew much in the top deeps there, those foundation deeps we've been putting on, but what in the world? Look at that. Well, we got a swarm moving in the truck here, I guess. Those are some of the queens we brought with us, but I thought I saw a swarm when I came up here, but that sure looks like a swarm's landing in the truck. That's funny. But I brought everything. We brought supers, we brought a whole thing of syrup, more medicine, lids, whatever. I mean, I brought everything. The goal, this is one of the 2 yards that we have. There was that yard that got robbed out last week. That's still a problem. I haven't been back yet. It's very much on the front of my mind. And then this yard has just been consistently a problem just due to mating rates. The hives themselves look fantastic. Getting this yard back up to 100% capacity has been a struggle all year long. And I just never seem can quite get enough mated queens to get up here. So it's going to be a long day, I think, if the splits failed. If the splits were good from last month, then hey man, it'll be pretty smooth sailing. If not, it's going to be a real grind, especially if they start robbing due to not having a lot of feed, or if they just get hyper aggressive again. I don't know. I don't really know what we're getting into. I hope it'll be a smooth day. But we're going to go ahead and start tearing in these, and hopefully at the end of the day, we're going to have 96 good-looking hives here. Well, just getting into queen checking. I'm running through the queenless hives first. And this one failed. Put a queen in there. They jumped right on her, though. I mean, you know, accepting her. They seem like they really want her. This is the 3rd split. The first 2 took. Look really good. Got plenty of cat brood, plenty of bees. We built these so strong that, like this one, I gave it 3 frames of brood, but it was still mostly a full box of bees. Just the cell failed or whatever, you know, probably dragonfly got her is my guess. But we're going to use the mated queens first, and if necessary, we'll tap into the cells that we brought after. But, you know, 2 out of 3 so far. I'm pretty happy with that. They're still pretty darn honey bound. Look at that. I think we've seen 1 super, you know, the 3rd D-box foundation that was being drawn a little bit, but there's really not been any significant wax production whatsoever, not as far as like drawing out foundation goes. I mean, the brood boxes are packed full. I mean, look at that. It's pretty nice. And they've only had 2 gallons of a 1-to-1 syrup. So I don't know, that's either they're getting something out there or it's just some leftover from the honey flow. And they were super plugged out last time I was here, but it's been over a month, so I don't know. They're looking pretty fat. Here's a split I made just about a month ago. Queen cell split. I think it was probably 4 brood. Could have been 3, but probably 4. But I mean, look at it. Sucker's pretty darn full. Definitely incredibly honey bound. Here's the medium super. Caught a decent population of there too. Also fully plugged out honey bound. These hives, these splits were built so strong last month that even though they just got a queen, they're just now getting some cat brood in there. It's mostly eggs and larvae. They look like a fully established hive, which is what I thought they would look like when I was building them last month. But you couldn't tell me hasn't been a hive that's been established all year long compared to one I just made, you know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, something like that. So, shoot, I mean, really, this little hive thing, they really need a deep super or something, just because if I feed them again, they've got no room at all for that queen to lay. The population would probably be better. They're just so completely honey bound. I'm going to give them a super just for the heck of it. Maybe they'll do something with it. I doubt it. I have seen really nothing going on in these other ones. But I've been mostly focusing on the splits. I always try to fix those first. Then I'll go back to the queen-right colony. So maybe there is something out there, but I've had to pull from a few of them just to rebuild the splits. I haven't really seen anything as far as those frames drawing. Still, I'm almost at the end of the row here, so got a couple dead outs to rebuild, and then I've got the new pallets I put out there. And the other side of the yard still needs to be worked. Well, guess what the mating percentage was for this row? I bet you can't figure it out. 13 splits here, just on this section. 7 of them were queen right, and 6 of them failed. So, a little over 50%, slightly, 53, 54%, something slightly technically like that, if you want to be absolutely precise. So, we can say better than 50%, but not in any meaningful way. By like a colony, a fraction of a colony. It's just insane, this freaking yard. It's driving me crazy. I mean, how can the mating percentage be so stinking precise every time we rebuild these hives? It doesn't even make like sense. You would think, like, what are the odds that every time you rebuild a hive, whether it's got a cell or not a cell or whatever the heck, it's gonna be 50%. It's like there's a bunch of dragonflies out in the woods there, and they're watching the mating flights of the queens, and they go, okay, hey, we're going to let you have a queen, and then we get a queen. 1 queen for you, 1 queen for us. And it's just like that. It's so irritating. Now, thankfully, all this side has been built with mated queens. So, you know, hopefully we'll get somewhere in the 90+ percentile of that. But, definitely these 6. I can tell you right now, I guess what the mating rate's going to be on there. I bet you I'm going to have 3 queen right hives next month. Maybe we get 4, maybe 3 1/4, whatever the heck the random fraction it is that comes out to. But that's just insane to me. This is it's the second time we rebuilt this yard, and also last year, same thing, 50%. You know, and of course I preempted this. I knew this from last year. That's why we moved them all in when they were queen right. But due to swarming, I still got that stinking 50% mating rate. It's driving me crazy. Like, it should not even statistically be possible for the mating rates to stay the same like this every freaking season throughout the year. It's like, what are the odds of that happening? But it's 100%. I can tell you that much. It's 100% chance of it happening, because I don't even know how many times it's happened this year. I think this is the second time we rebuilt the yard this year. I don't even know. I know I had the same problem last year, so I mean, it's been multiple times. It's just been it's driving me crazy. But I'm going to build them anyways. I'm going to go ahead and do it, but I'm just preparing myself psychologically for a 50% failure, and including the 6 that I fixed here. I mean, which, you know, they have mated queens. If I get a 50% mating on those mated queens, I'm seriously going to think there's like a conspiracy to come out here and just yank out 50% of the queens. I mean, it's just, there's no way that could happen, surely. But it's just crazy. I can't believe it, but it's in front of my face. I can't deny it. 50% mating. Here we go again. Look at this frame. Why is this frame even still here? it 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 was just crafted back in the Stone Age and has somehow just found its way into my hive. I think it's time to cycle this one out. Okay, we got through the yard. The yard's back to 96 colonies. Well, actually, it was we increased it up to 96 colonies. It was 8 colonies shorter than that. Kind of a total disaster here. You can see all the flags. Those were queenless colonies, dead colonies. There's a whole pallet of them. It was kind of a nightmare. So I don't even know what the mating rate was on this side because we were hitting colonies that were queen right a month ago. Were now queenless. They were full of swarm cells. Of course, you saw that swarm in the truck. It was up there in the trees. I can kind of see it somewhere up in there now. We tried to catch it and actually to use it to rebuild because we were so desperate for queens. We went through all the mated queens. We went through all the cells. We started building the dead hives after that with, 1 honey, 4 brood. So basically like a 5-frame nuke. It was just really a mess. When I was first over here, it was kind of okay. Most everything was queen right. They were strong. It was 50-50 whether the queenless ones took, of course. But, honestly, I kind of knew that going into it at this point. I was hoping I'd be wrong, but I'm not. And, but, generally they were okay. And they still had some bees in them. So sometimes I could just drop a few frames of brood in a queen or a cell or whatever and move on. And problem is when we got over to this side, was extremely stinking bad, and I think part of it's because they were so aggressive last month, we could barely work them, and they were robbing a lot, so we just had to really power through this little section here, and this section over here, and you can tell because the hives just look like junk because they weren't taken care of properly, so you ended up with a lot of just dead. A lot of them had been robbed out completely. They started robbing on us a lot earlier. I had to throw a tarp over here on this pallet, but we've got 37 queenless, so we went up by 6 queenless. Some of that's due to us adding these extra 8, and there were 6 or 7 dead outs that I didn't have lids for last time that we fixed. But a lot of them too, we just kept hitting queenless that were supposed to be queen right. What I did notice, we split every single hive here except for 2. I think there were 2 on the end there. And we generally took, about 5 frames of population out of them, 4 brood, a honey, whatever. And what I did notice is that after we finished splitting, the robbing kind of died down, and I do wonder if there were, whichever hives were doing the robbing, that we kind of ripped their guts out, and took their bees away. The robbing diminished some. It's still going on. It's not perfect. We did lay some honey frames out a little ways away too. They were jumping on, so that probably helped to some degree. They're extremely stinking honey bound. We're going to give them a 1-to-1 syrup. But it's mostly to help the little splits that we rebuilt. And we did take some foundation, not a ton, but a little bit here and there to checkerboard down on the brood boxes. And hopefully they will draw some of the foundation frames out, because they did draw some frames down there in the bottom boxes. They really have just not touched those top boxes whatsoever. And what we were noticing is a lot of the hives that were dead or had been robbed out were the splits we had made last time. And the hives that were queen right last time, they were extremely strong, and just like, it looked almost like they were on honey flow. There's no honey going on right now, I promise, and they've only had the 1 bucket. So I think what they were doing is they were just straight up murdering the little hives and robbing them out. That's really what it looked like. So it made them obnoxiously strong, which, in a way was okay, because we were able to pull enough resources from the good ones to rebuild the whole yard and even increase it by 8 hives. The problem is we're still looking at a 50% mating rate, and I can't even trust the queen right colonies anymore, because you saw there was a swarm in the truck. There's one up in the trees, and I saw cells in a lot of the hives. I tried to use the cells to rebuild some of the splits when I ran out of cells and queens. But, the problem is when hives want to swarm, I don't think there's anything you can do to stop them from swarming. It's just going to happen most of the time, no matter what you do. So I can't even count on the queen right colonies to be queen right next month, because they're likely to swarm on me. So I just don't know. I don't feel good about this yard. We're still at very, very high mating rates, less than 50%, but not by much. And when I factor in that some of these are going to swarm, we could potentially get up to 50%. I don't know. We've got all that fall pollen coming in. We're hitting them with a 1-to-1. I'm really worried about it. Definitely from now on, this yard is going to get a 1-to-2 super thin syrup, just to keep them growing. But I don't know, it was a really rough day. I mean, it was just You went to go like fix a flag. So you went over here to a hive that didn't have a flag that should have been queen right, and it would be queenless. And then you go over to another hive that shouldn't have been queen right, and it was queenless. And then you would check this one, oh, and that would be queen right. But that one little hive wasn't going to fix 3, and it was just like the amount of queenless colonies kept building up and building up and building up, which thankfully this side was very good. So we kept coming back from this side over here, jumping over here to pull resources out of them. So I don't know, the robbing does seem okay. There was a little bit of mite damage. We went ahead and treated them. Don't want to take any risk there. The boxes and stuff, I mean, look, are just absolutely terrible. I used most of the good boxes I had on the truck. We can take these triples off probably later in the season and just swap them out. And we got to break these down to doubles anyways. I'm thinking to do that in November. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, really, this yard just needs a ton of mated queens, and I can't get them. It's too late in the season for me to realistically even think about raising queens at any kind of scale. That ship has long sailed. So the best we can do is keep dropping cells in them and rebuilding them. But next month is probably really honestly our last chance to have a chance to really rebuild them. The nice thing is everything's pretty much solid comb here, more or less. So if we can get them established, they can be a very good yard. And this is an incredibly good yard during the fall and the winter. It just obviously really sucks for mating. And of course the robbing didn't help, but hopefully we took care of that. So I don't know. This is a real problem yard for us. I'm really worried about it. We have a huge amount of hives here, ton of comb invested, a lot of time and labor invested on constantly remaking this yard every stinking month we come to it. I'm really worried about it. But the hives that do survive will usually almost always go to California and be absolutely amazing. I just need to get that number up because right now it's very low. Right now we're looking at like, I don't know, what is it, 60 colonies or something that has a chance to go if they don't even swarm anymore. Maybe with swarming we might have 50 hives, which I'm so grateful for, but that's not great when you got 96 sitting here and we're just beat the heck up every month just grinding away at this yard. It's very disheartening to come to a yard and to constantly remake about like half the freaking yard every month. It's exhausting. And yeah, I could move the yard, but it's just too late, I think, in the season for me to bother with it. And we'll try to fix it next month. We'll ride it out. We'll get what we get. Just really aggravating today. Pretty tore up about it. I mean, I'm already dreading coming back here in October. But all right, guys, we're gonna finish up. We got to finish feeding. We got to clean up all this mess. The truck's a mess. We still got to mow here in the dark. I just wanted to film before we ran out of daylight here. And yeah, just real crappy day today, honestly. But you know, you're gonna have them. We did everything we could do, I think, as beekeepers to try and solve the problem. I don't know. The rest is up to the bees. All right, big test day. I'm pretty excited here. I ran through all 6 of the Cloake boards, including the queenless starter, to get them prepped for our little test here. And as you can see, I caged, in the end, I ended up caging 3 out of the 6 queens from the Cloake boards. I took the 3 worst Cloake boards and removed their queens. See if that would increase graft production, to see if maybe the queen pheromone was getting up in that top box, bypassing the slide. And as you can also see that I have 5 queens here. So what? Believe it or not, what happened, again, 2 of the Cloake boards had foreign queens in the top boxes. They still had their original queen down here in the bottom box. But they had 2 looked like brand new unmarked queens. They hadn't been there long. There was no cat brood. There was eggs and some larvae. So it also wasn't like a cell I missed last week or anything, because she had time to mate and start laying. So I suspect, probably, you know, I'm just guessing, they fly out from the minis or some of the weak hives that are failing and the beetles chase them out, whatever. And I find these top boxes are just extremely appealing to swarms or just a loose queen, especially after when I have the slide in. So I guess kind of nice. I got 2 free queens this week, so kind of a plus. I did leave and I did mark the colonies where I took the queens, so I know that these are kind of my little test group here, and that are fully queenless. I did check all the frames. I've cut out all the cells. There's still open brood and stuff down there. I also wrote down the 2 hives that I removed their additional queens from that were up here in the top, because there's going to be eggs and open brood in the top boxes here. So I know those are going to compete against my grafts. So if I see a low take, on this round, I'm going to attribute it probably to just competition against my grafts. So, but the other 3 Cloake boards, which were the 3 best, I left their queens alone. I left them alone. I tried not to bring up, I think number 12 here was pretty weak. I had to bring up a couple frames of brood from the bottom to the top. They were just too weak, I think, to really make cells. But I tried to not bring brood in the top box of these colonies, so they would not compete against my grafts. The brood looks healthy, the bees are looking healthy, the larva looks really healthy, so I think I've beat down most of the mites. They don't just go away that quickly, so I'm sure they're still there. I need to continue treatment, but they look significantly better than they did last week. I definitely didn't see mites running around on the poor bees. I didn't see any deformed wings, so everything's looking really nice. I also took their buckets off because I think that's an unfair test for these to have buckets and that queenless nuke to not have buckets. I do have an open feeder still set out though, so they can kind of gather what they want. Populations are varied. Some of these populations are, about a nuke, about 5 frames. Some of them are a full 10 frames and in between. So I can get a range of population here. I can see if the open brood's impacting grafts, or, the ones that don't have open brood, they still have cat brood, so they still have some production. There are no cells, unless I just really screwed up. I went through every frame at least twice and cut out any rogue queen cells, so they should be pretty darn desperately queenless. This nuke is still looking really, really nice. They're a solid, beautiful 4 frames of bees, and definitely no disease, anything there. I cut out a dozen rogue cells they had made from that first round of grafts, and I've already forgotten what I got. Did I get 12 or something on that first round? I can't remember now, but it was pretty good. And so whatever they took from my grafts, they also raised about a dozen cells of their own. They've been completely removed. There are no queens there. I quadruple checked this one. There's no random queens. There's no eggs. There's no larvae. They're just cat brood, honey, and pollen. And 4 really nice frames of bees. We got new bees hatching out. So yeah, basically is kind of a close as I can get as far as quality goes on the hives. I don't see any major issues or things that should throw me off this week. And the reason those 2 queens got up top in the cloaks over here is because I'm stupid. I said last time I had removed the secondary excluders that we put on here, and I was going to put them back on later, and then I ended up not doing it. So that was my fault. Although I got 2 free queens, I guess that's something, but I got less cells this week because of it. But you see, I did do it. Here's the proof. I did my job right. I added the secondary excluder. Of course, the Cloake board has a plastic excluder here, and then we just throw a metal excluder above the Cloake board here. So if another foreign queen does fly in here into the entrance of the Cloake, she's going to get stuck, I hope, here if my boxes and stuff are not too rotted and she can squeeze through. Earlier this season, we actually found a queen that was living here. The bees had drawn Burkholm all between the metal excluder and the plastic excluder. You had a queen down here, and this was, we had our grafts up here, and there was just a queen making a tiny little hive. She was laying eggs, larvae, the whole shebang. Bees were taking care of her. We had to cut it all out, unfortunately, but, we got a queen from there. So yeah, I definitely find it's much, much better to just to have a secondary excluder here to help with any, swarms or wherever those queens are coming from. And yeah, I think that's just probably a better option to go with. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to have to remove it every time, but that's 2 queens this week that were foreign queens that had moved into the cell builders this week. 1 queen last week and 1 queen the week prior to that. So I've gotten 4 queens out of 6 cell builders in the last 3 weeks. And they are definitely not the parent queens. They're still down there and they're marked, so we know. So that's just how bad and how often that happens. And look, I mean, we are in September. Just to give you an idea, you can imagine what would happen in spring. They'd be very attractive. So I'm going to try to keep these girls alive. I will put them back in their colonies once I see what the grafts do, but I'll just try to bank them or something for a couple of days. Hopefully they'll be able to hold on. I am going to give these hives, a couple of hours just to really settle. I tore through them pretty hard. They're a little stressed out. And, I did just take the queen out. Normally I graft immediately, whenever I make a queenless nuke or I put slides in or take the queen out, whatever. I think 15 minutes usually is fine for the bees to be in a queenless state. But I really want to increase that chance that there'll be even more queenless, and just kind of give my grafts here an edge and let all the hives sort of be equally queenless for a little bit, other than the 3 cloak boards here that still do have their queens. So I'm gonna wait a little bit, I'll put grafts in, and then we will find out how they do. Okay, this is the day after the grafts. You can see I numbered the queen cages so I can see what hive they came out of. Number 14 is going to go in here on number 14 cloak board. Looks like all the queens survived the night. I just gave them a little sponge, a little dollop of queen candy. Kept them in a battery box in the house. They did just fine. So I'm just going to take these queens. I gotta run out pretty quick, so I'm just going to be fast. I'm going to take the queens. I'm just going to slide them here in the entrance. They can chew them out. I'm going to go ahead and pull the slides out, and then I'll come back and check the grafts as soon as I have time and compare them, these cloaks compared to the queenless starter setup. Okay, here's round 2 out of the queenless starter. Not as good as I'd like. Looks like we got maybe 9 out of 20 cells, so less than 50%. I left them in too long. I should have pulled them out as soon as I got capped, because you can see a couple of those they did some bird comb on. I was looking great though, population wise. I mean, they're solid 4 frames. Looking really nice. I've already cut out all their cells, so that's not really fantastic. I would really hope for a better take than that. Honestly, we'll have to compare it against the cloaks over there, see what we get. Well, that's surprising. Look at that. Got 19 out of 20 here on our cloak. This is number 15. This is the best cloak that I have. But I did quite a bit better than the queenless starter. I mean, shoot. Only missing 1. That's pretty darn good. This one still has its queen as well now. I didn't flag, but I put thumbtacks in the ones that I took the queens out of with the grafts in. Remember, I did that, I guess, almost a week ago now. So, definitely didn't really have a pheromone issue with this one. Only got 1 cell out of this cloak, and this is one I removed the queen from, so no improvement there at all. Here's another one I took the queen out of, only 2 cells. So, funny, the one that had its queen that was downstairs did the best, which is usually is my best cloak. These 2, which to be fair, are usually not that great. Even when the queen was removed, when the grafts were in, they're still not very good. This cloak had a queen, only 1 out of 20. Shoot. This hive also had a queen that was free roaming. We got 2 out of 20. This is typically my second best cloak, although we had a queen get up here recently, so there is a little bit of open brood competing against the grafts, but honestly, pretty much exactly the same as the other cloaks, minus number 15, which did exceedingly well. Yeah, look at that. 0 out of 20. Number 3, that was a thumbtack, so completely remove the queen from this one also. Not a slight bit of difference here. Definitely didn't help whatsoever. So I guess the queen pheromones, my guess, is probably not what's causing this issue. I would have seen some kind of increase somewhere out of these 3, and I just got nothing. Well, here is this week's harvest. Not fantastic. 32 cells out of what do we do, 140 grafts, so about a 23% take overall. And really, it's the number 15 cloak board and the queenless starter that are basically carrying us. The number 15 cloak, by far and large, did extremely good, and it generally does. Week to week, it's always usually the best. But that queenless starter always seems to be pretty darn close to it. The other 5 cloaks are doing little to nothing. We've tried pulling the queens. They've all been medicated pretty strongly. I don't see any sign of mite damage. Doesn't mean there's not viruses prevalent in the bees. Most assuredly, there probably still is. But number 15 was also just as sick as the rest of them. They've received everything. Same amount of sunlight, same amount of daylight, same amount of whatever. Obviously, and this is not something I've been doing for just a week or 2, right? We've been doing this every week, all year long. So it's weird. Number 8 is usually also very good, but it has crashed recently. And I thought maybe it was the queen. And yeah, there's some open brood, but it did so terrible this week too, and has been doing terrible. So I really have no freaking clue. It's almost like that one cloak board, the number 15 we have that does well, is just primed to do it. Is it genetic? freaking luck. I don't know. I just know it's consistently every single week for months on end doing extremely good. And the other ones were too. You know, they weren't all bad. They were doing great this spring. It's just been since about the third week of June, give or take, that we've just seen a drop off. And regardless of everything I have tried, it's not impacting it. But number 15, it just keeps chugging away. It has a bad week here and there. It has not been perfect every week. Been pretty freaking good overall. And that little queenless starter, although again, it's not comparing against, it's not as good as my best Cloake, but it's consistently pretty darn good. It seems to be hovering on average somewhere around 50%, give or take a little bit. So that's fine. I mean, I'm okay with getting a 50% take on our graphs in the second half of the season. I could live with that. So I've got to think about it, but I think probably, I mean, I'm averaging like 1 or 2 cells for the other 5 Cloakes. I mean, is that even if I get 2 cells a pop, that's 10 cells. Would it not be better to just make one more queenless nuke over there and get about 10 cells out of 20 graphs versus maintaining 5 others? I definitely think I should keep the number 15 rolling back there. Obviously, it's doing great. Why screw with it? You know, it's getting me good cells. And honestly, I probably could have done 2 bars this past week. And I bet they would have done more. The other 5, I'm wasting my time, I feel like, at this point. So I'm probably going to shut down the other 5 Cloakes. I'm still going to think on it, but that's probably what I'll do. I could always use them as a finisher hive for the queenless starter as well. I haven't been finishing off these cells. I've just been letting the queenless nuke here finish it up. Or I could even break down some of these, maybe, and even try to make a queenless starter. I don't know. You know, we're getting pretty late in the season for me to keep making splits. There's still a few more I want to do. But, you know, it's not like I need 500 cells or something anytime soon. So my current thought is just to leave this little thing going, keep it strong, keep number 15 Cloake going over there. And, you know, shoot, if I get 25, 30 cells a week, that's not terrible. You know, I mean, if I get desperate, I'll make another nuke. You know, I just don't see the point in me keep dumping so much time and energy and resources doing this week after week when it's just failing week after week after week. Maybe I should just pick out the best ones, call out the rest, and just, you know, whatever. We make a couple dozen cells a week. That's gonna probably be okay. So I don't know. Again, I'll think on it, but definitely the removing the queens did not seem to have any impact whatsoever on those Cloakes. And again, the hive that did have a queen running around did better by a massive margin than the ones that didn't have queens. So it almost seems to be a trait of the individual cell builder that's boosting the cells up. That's all I can figure. What that is genetic. Is it some kind of breed or something? I have no freaking clue. But I can't deny that it's just constantly doing better than the others. So, all right, well, at least we got some this week. I guess that's it for this little test.